950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Today, rain and storms with a high of 84. Then tonight, more rain possible with a low of 64. Nightingale is your cozy, comfortable neighborhood bar and restaurant at 26th and Lyndale in Minneapolis. Come in for the famous Nightingale burger or the ginger tamari chicken wings. View their menu or place a takeout order at nightingalempls.com. Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
You are listening to a special broadcast of The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. With the attack on our democracy through the assassination of Minnesota House Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark, along with the shootings of Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, and in the same night, the targeting of State Senator Ann Rest and an additional Minnesota House representative, we feel it is necessary to take a step back from our regular programming to reflect on the legacy of Speaker Emerita Hortman. We'll also look deeper into the updated facts of the case later in the show, as well as how to consider how we process this tragedy in terms of moving forward. We will return to our regular broadcasts tomorrow. We are joined today by Minnesota House Representative Sandra Feist, who is a member of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, representing District 39B. First elected in 2020, Representative Feist served alongside Speaker Emerita Hortman for 5 years. Representative Feist is the co-vice chair of the Public Safety, Finance, and Policy Committee and also serves on the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law and Veterans and Military Affairs Division committees. Representative Feist, welcome back to The Gailey Show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
First of all, my condolences. And we wanted to spend as much time as we could over the past 2 days thinking about the victims and Speaker Emerita Hortman and honoring the legacy that she had here in Minnesota. So would you mind sharing a little bit of your thoughts and reflections on her work and her legacy?
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me on to talk about Melissa. As I mentioned yesterday, I was more of a mess. I think I'm less of a mess, but this might get weepy. But anyway, thank you so much for honoring Melissa. I've been really lucky to have served with her for 5 years since I was first elected. She was an incredible leader. We are a very fractious caucus. I don't know if you've noticed. You haven't noticed as much as you would have if she were not our leader. But we have a lot of opinions. We have a lot of big personalities. And to have somebody who, like, the far left to the absolute center of the political divide, that we could all look to Melissa and trust her and respect her and follow her lead is a really remarkable thing. And I really think it's important in this moment to give her the credit that she never sought, but she is due for everything that we've been able to accomplish in the last several years. The trifecta term was what it was. It was as historic as it was because she was just an incredible, singular, historic leader for Minnesota. And I was honored to play a small part in that, but I'm so grateful to her.
For folks in Chicago, when we mentioned the trifecta term, this is a really historic moment in Minnesota. It's when the DFL controlled both houses of the legislature and the governorship, and the legislative session from that is dubbed the Minnesota Miracle, and the amount of stuff that was passed, much of it, almost all of it, very progressive in nature. And last year when Governor Walz was on the ticket along with Kamala Harris, and all of those policies that he was, touting of what we did here in Minnesota. To your point, Representative Feist, Speaker Emerita Hortman was behind a lot of that. And I really appreciated yesterday at the press conference when he was talking about he was sharing a story about how Representative Hortman had shared a book, I think it was Getting to Yes, and how she brought together, how she acknowledged that there's going to be conflict. And that's fine. It's how do we manage the conflict and how do we move forward? Can you talk more, because we're in a very politically charged and have been in a very politically charged period for the past 10 years. Can you talk more about Speaker Emerita Hortman's approach to conflict and navigating that, both within the DFL and working across the aisle?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think she was a very skilled, obviously, she was a very skilled negotiator. The book Getting to Yes, which I also love, is all about the kind of concept of negotiations not being about, you want this and I want this, and we somehow come to the middle and we all hate our lives because nobody got what they wanted. But like the concept of getting to yes is that like what you say you want isn't always what you want. And I would say that Melissa put that into action when she was negotiating at times over the last 5 years with I'll just say it, like certain men. And she would come back from negotiations and she'd be like, these men with their emotions. But she understood their emotions, and they had emotions. And she found a way to like make sure that their egos got what they wanted, and that Minnesota got what it needed. And so I think she was able to really like dive beneath the surface to look at the kind of the humanity of the people she was negotiating with and against, right, and alongside, and really help people get what they needed emotionally so that we could get what we needed as a state.
Yeah, negotiation is such a, wow, what a skill and an art. Mm-hmm. And it's not about clobbering somebody over the head or pushing somebody into a corner, or and I'm not naming any names, but any of that kind of sort of is somebody that doesn't know how to negotiate, that's somebody, whatever, immature, inexperienced, that acts childishly that way, that wants everything. They want to get everything they want, and they're not going to give up on anything. So it sounds like she was really very capable as a humanist, I guess I'll say, to read people.
Yeah. And she was often negotiating with people who didn't have that skill and that perspective and that wisdom. Right. And, I think that is a problem that's grown more. It's become more of an issue over time as more people are elected to government who don't seem to believe in government and who are nihilists. And so like seeing Melissa deftly navigate those dynamics has just been, it was honored to be like close to that process.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Minnesota House Representative Sandra Feist, member of the DFL party, represents the 39B district. Representative Feist, I'm wondering if there was a particular piece of legislation that you worked with closely with Speaker Emerita Hortman, or if there were particular pieces of legislation that you want to highlight to say, hey, these are things we really need to uplift and remember of her and her legacy.
Yeah. Well, you started with a question that I thought you were going to ask, and you asked a slightly different question. But I'm going to answer. They always say politicians are supposed to answer the question they wish they were asked. So I'll start with that, but you can circle back if you want. I was just thinking about like pieces of legislation that I worked on with Melissa that I think really exemplify the way in which she led. And so I'll answer that question. So one of the, the story that came to my mind, over the weekend first was the Student Data Privacy Act, which is a pretty wonky bill that I carried in my first term. And due to just some internal dynamics, even though everyone supported it and didn't have a problem with it, like it got to the finish line and I was being told you are not allowed to make a motion to concur. And in the legislature, it's very rare. Oh, I could tell you the whole story, Jim, like offline. But the point of this story is that like I was being told I couldn't do what was actually in my power to do. And it's very rare that an individual House member has the power to pass a bill. But nobody needed to schedule anything. I wasn't being given permission. And so I got really wound up and I was like, I'm going to make a motion to concur and then I'm going to quit the legislature. This is too stupid. I can't. And so I texted Melissa and I was like, can I talk with you in person? And she had COVID and she was at home and she was like, yes. And so I drove over immediately and we sat outside in her back deck and just talked. And I, told her about how much this bill meant to me, how important it was, and how I was like, I have to make this motion to concur. And she was just so gracious. And she was like, yeah, you're going to make a motion to concur. This is so stupid. And even like during our meeting, she was like texting people and being like, get this like figured out, like, because it was like days left in the session. And she told me once, she's like, you have to ask for things. You have to assert yourself. You have to be the squeaky wheel to get things done here. And then when you did that, which I did every once in a while, she was really like receptive and supportive. And, there are so many of us, and every single one of us politicians is a total diva. And like the fact that she was able to like make me a total diva, like all my colleagues, feel seen and supported, really was it meant a lot to me. And so that was like the first thing, like example that came to mind. And I can provide more examples, but you're welcome to ask more questions.
Wow.
I would, yes, this is an opportunity to honor her and the contributions to Minnesota. And as I believe rightly, if I may put some editorial in here, rightly being described as the most consequential Speaker of the Minnesota House in the state's history. So if there are other examples that you would love to shine a light on and let people know about, I absolutely would welcome that.
Okay, I'll give another example. And I don't know why this example is the one that's going to make me cry, but whatever. So I carried the nurses bill last term, the Keeping Nurses at the Bedside Act. You may remember that Mayo Clinic killed it. And so I was working on that so hard. It was like a 30-page bill, and we had negotiated it, and it was just being sidetracked and derailed. And there's this concept of the gosh, what's this even called? But like you go to the I'm horrible. I'm on live radio and I can't remember. Anyway, you go to the people, the powers that be, the tribunal, that's the word. The tribunal is like the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. And they have this like people that you beseech when your bill gets to that point. And so I kept having to go to the tribunal to plead my case and get this bill passed. And it was such a nightmare, and it was so contentious, and everybody had feelings, and the nurses had feelings, and Mayo Clinic had many feelings. But like Melissa, like she sat next to me and she like memorized that freaking bill and like helped me line edit it. And she's like, show me where you did this. Show me where you negotiated that. And then she tried so hard to get it passed. Like she helped me find money to like figure stuff out. And then when it died, like this is another example of just how she was. Like she did not, she was like, she treated me like an adult. And she was just like, it's dead. This isn't happening. You're done. Like end of the road. Like she, like, it's weird to be like crying over her being like that. But, like, there was just something about the way that she fought and she fought. And then when it was time to be like, this is over, we've lost, we'll come back to fight another day, she like didn't mince words. She like, it was like that bill was probably the most traumatic. Well, I guess now this is the most traumatic thing, but like that bill was one of the worst things that I've ever gone through and as a legislator. And she was like right there along the way, like trying to support me and help me and get this really good bill passed. So
I need to fit in a break here. You're listening to a special broadcast of The Gately Show. Your Twin Cities Metro Public Libraries are committed to providing quality services, resources, and programs to the LGBTQ+ community. Check out the Metro Pride book list, including ebooks and e-audio for kids, teens, and adults at melsa.org/pride-booklist. That's melsa.org/pride-booklist. You'll find titles specific to different identities, including aromantic, asexual, bi+, gay, genderqueer, intersex, lesbian, queer families, transgender, and two-spirit. Stop by Melsa's tent at Twin Cities Pride to share your own reading recommendations. Check out those contributed by other festival attendees, pick up buttons and bookmarks, and find out more about your Twin Cities Metro Public Libraries. Don't have a library card? Staff at the tent can help you with that. There will be librarians from the Metro Public Library systems who are happy to provide book recommendations and other info on how to get the most from your library card.
What does it mean to begin? Creation Story explores Native origin stories through powerful contemporary art, connecting past and present with every brushstroke in sculpture. Explore how identity, culture, and resilience are shaped through art. Creation Story, now at All My Relations Arts through July 26th. This exhibition invites you to the heart of the Ochate Shikoin storytelling, where spiritual relatives guide the way. Open to all. Learn more at allmyrelationsarts.org. Experience the beginning. Experience Creation Story at All My Relations Arts in Minneapolis.
Is your remote workforce putting your company at risk? Cyber criminals are targeting your employees with COVID-19 inspired emails and attacking businesses like yours. Hi, Mark Sommerfeld from Rymark. Rymark has the tools and expertise to enable your employees to work securely from home. If you need help getting your staff to work remotely and securely, call 651-328-8900 or go to rymarkit.com. That's 651-328-8900 or rymarkit.com.
Your Twin Cities Metro Public Libraries are committed to providing quality services, resources, and programs to the LGBTQ+ community. Check out the Metro Pride book list, including ebooks and e-audio for kids, teens, and adults at melsa.org/pride-booklist. That's melsa.org/pride-booklist. You'll find titles specific to different identities, including aromantic, asexual, bi+, gay, genderqueer, intersex, lesbian, queer families, transgender, and two-spirit. Stop by Melsa's tent at Twin Cities Pride to share your own reading recommendations. Check out those contributed by other festival attendees. Pick up buttons and bookmarks and find out more about your Twin Cities Metro Public Libraries. Don't have a library card? Staff at the tent can help you with that. There will be librarians from the Metro Public Library systems who are happy to provide book recommendations and other info on how to get the most from your library card. Welcome back to a special broadcast of The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour. We are here with Minnesota House Representative Sandra Feist. We are talking about the legacy of Speaker Emerita Hortman. Representative Feist, you were talking, there's a card that you received before from a Republican staffer before the night of the special session. And for folks in Chicago, the legislative term ended, and then we had to come back into a special session. The legislature did, not me, the royal we. And Representative Feist, would you like to share what was in that card?
Yeah, I would love to. So the card was given to me. It was the very last thing, actually, the last conversation I had as the special session ended, and I went home. And I think it exemplifies kind of where we need to be going politically, like in our nation, to avoid political violence in the future. She wrote, "Your willingness to collaborate across the aisle has not gone unnoticed in a time when political discourse feels more polarizing than ever. Your approach has been a welcome reminder that there still is common ground to be found." And that just, it meant a lot to me that night. And I've been thinking about it a lot over the weekend and this week. Because it's really clear that when we dehumanize one another, then this is what happens. And so, that's why I have been really committed to Civility Caucus and to working with colleagues across the aisle to create space for us to get together and to see one another as people we disagree with, but who are also, parents and, have pets and, like nature. Like, we have so much in common. And I think we need to understand that about each other, and we then need to reflect that to the public.
Can you tell us more about the Civility Caucus? Because we've seen the ugliness and the worst of our divisive, heated rhetoric in the past few days from elected officials, and owners of social media that have just been, propagating misinformation and cruelty. Can you talk more about the Civility Caucus? Because I think this is really meaningful, I think, for us to be processing right now as we're all trying to figure out what just happened, this attack on our democracy, the loss of, 2 lives. Tell us more about the Civility Caucus.
Yeah, I would love to. And to be clear, I think Civility Caucus, it's an iterative process. So if you come to Civility Caucus once and not regularly, I think we're not building those connections in the way we need to. But we just go out for happy hours. We've had speakers come and talk to us while we ate lunch together. We had our first bipartisan karaoke evening this year. And it turns out the Republicans like musicals a lot. And I like musicals a lot. So I kind of realized that like I'm not very cool. And I feel like generally like DFL has the cool contingent. And I was like, I think I fit in with the Republicans when it comes to musical taste. But that like it means a lot to me. Like I'm doing a bipartisan musical fundraiser. And it's going to be 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and we're working on some I think we're going to do a choral piece and 1 musical theater piece. But we don't agree on much, but we all love music so much. And one of those people introduced a bill that I spent a lot of my time this session railing against. But because we, sat next to each other and had a meal, we've sung duets together. Like when we fought on the floor, it felt like we were 2 people with really, really different opinions. But not like I didn't think of him as like this evil, like pure evil. I was like, this is a person who like needs to learn more, and that it's my job to like educate him. So, I mean, I see like not just amongst leaders, but also in the community, we need to find more opportunities to socialize with people who have really different belief systems. And this is what Robert Putnam writes about in Bowling Alone. And this is something that I have been thinking a lot about lately.
Do you think we'd be surprised? I mean, I know I'm guilty of it, thinking of Republicans in a block and that they're all a monolith. That's such small thinking, but I know we're all humans guilty of it. Would we be surprised how many Republicans have an inkling of the way we think, or have some sympathy for the way we think? Because of course that's not what they're allowed to behave like, I guess, in front of the media. But actually there's more humanity there than somebody like me would give them credit for.
I think the second part of your question, yes, I think there is more humanity than we give people credit for. I was heading up to one of my colleagues' very Republican districts to give a speech about menstrual equity. And I told him I was coming to town and possibly coming with my family. And he said that we should all come over and we should have dinner at his home and our kids could play together. And so I do think that the humanity is something that the public doesn't necessarily see. In terms of surprisingly, we agree, I would say no. I think that what you see is what you get generally in terms of people's like belief systems. But I do feel like I have been able to have very good conversations. Like for example, Representative Baker and I have very different perspectives on paid family and medical leave, earned sick and state time, workers' rights in general. But he and I had a number of really just sort of deep philosophical conversations over the course of this session where we were really trying to understand one another. And we definitely didn't come together. Like it wasn't like we're like, oh, now we can find this middle ground. But that dialogue was still really valuable to me.
Yeah.
We're talking with Minnesota House Representative Sandra Feist. We have just a couple of minutes left here, and this is a big question, but what is one thing that people could do to honor Speaker Emerita Hortman?
Yeah, so right towards the end of session, Melissa and I ended up going to the food trucks and talking, getting food together, coming back and eating, which is like so leisurely. Like usually she's just was, doing all the things like making sure that the government ran, but she had some time. And so we had this really nice lunch and she just looked out on the Capitol complex and said that we need more trees. Like if she could do anything, she would like pass laws to plant more trees at the Capitol. But she always talked about trees. Like whenever we were talking about like, what would we do if we could do a thing? She's like, we need more trees. So plant a tree for Melissa. That's what I recommend. She'd love that.
Thank you so much, Representative Feist, for joining us here today. I know it's not under the circumstances that we would normally want to be speaking, but I just really appreciate the time that you've taken to give us some more insight into who Speaker Emerita Hortman was as a person, how she approached the role, and her legacy. And so thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for honoring Melissa.
We are going to fit in a break here on this special broadcast of the Gailey Show. When we come back, we're going to read the statement that Melissa and Mark Hortman released yesterday. The children of Melissa and Mark Hortman released yesterday. We're also going to give you some updates in the case and some new reporting from the Minnesota News Connection. Stay tuned. You're listening to a special edition of The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF and WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Report and the broadcast. You're listening to AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
June is bursting with color, community, and joy, and Coscart is your destination for shopping with pride and purpose. Find pride-themed earrings that support queer causes, hand-poured candles that celebrate identity, and bath teas that nourish your spirit, all while supporting the makers and mission-driven brands working to build a better world. At Coscart, every item reflects a cause, every brand gives back, and every order helps create the kind of future we want to live in. Biodegradable packaging and carbon offset shipping are standard. And during Pride Month, you get free local delivery in the Twin Cities when you enter pickup at checkout, now through June 30th. Whether you're buying a gift, treating yourself, or just browsing for joy, know that every purchase supports positive action. Celebrate Pride. Shop with purpose. Visit cause-cart.com today for free local delivery in the Twin Cities when you enter pickup at checkout until June 30th. Cause-cart.com. Shop what matters to you.
This June, Twin Cities Gay Men's Chorus serves Diva Worship for their Leading Ladies Divas of Broadway Pride concert. Feel the heat, the passion, the undeniable power of music that sets your soul on fire. From the sultry seduction of Bring On the Men, to the soul-stirring wisdom of Children Will Listen, to the joyous, rebellious charm of Do Re Mi. With dazzling harmonies, show-stopping flair, and a touch or more of jazz hands, the Twin Cities Gay Men's Chorus will take you on a thrilling, emotional, and downright life-changing musical journey. It's the electric energy of 180 voices, bold, unapologetic, and dripping with Broadway brilliance. This isn't just a concert, it's a celebration of pride, power, and the irresistible magic of Broadway. The dates are June 21st and 22nd at the Ordway. Tickets start at $28. Get yours today at tcgmc.org. That's tcgmc.org. It's entertainment worth coming out for.
Chanhassen Dinner Theaters brings you its most popular show of all time, Grease. You'll hear all your favorite hits from the Broadway musical and the movie. Join the whole gang at Rydell High. We'll sing, we'll dance, we'll bring you back to high school life in the 50s. Poodle skirts, bobby socks, the soda shop, and drive-in movies. Grease. It'll rock your socks off. Order your tickets today. Visit chanhassendt.com.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Tonight, cloudy with a low of 62. Wednesday, cloudy with a high of 79. Then Wednesday night, cloudy with a low of 62. Nightingale is your cozy, comfortable neighborhood bar and restaurant at 26th and Lindale in Minneapolis. Come in for the famous Nightingale burger or the ginger tamari chicken wings. View their menu or place a takeout order at nightingalempls.com.
AM 950 KTNF, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
You are listening to a special broadcast of The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. With the attack on our democracy through the assassination of Minnesota House Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark, along with the shooting of Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, and in the same night, the targeting of State Senator Ann Rest and an additional Minnesota House representative, we feel it is necessary to take a step back from our regular programming to reflect on the legacy of Speaker Emerita Hortman. We're also going to take a deeper look into, or we're going to take updates on the case as we have them, and also some reporting on how we can move forward through this tragedy, and a statement from the Hortman's children. As we're talking about the legacy, and we want to thank again Representative Sandra Feist for joining us to talk about Speaker Emerita Hortman's legacy. There is a package that I want to play here from the Minnesota News Connection of others that are paying tribute to Melissa, Senator Hortman, Representative Hortman, rather, her legacy. Mike Moen from Minnesota News Connection has more.
Fighting for a wide range of people with a skill for compromise. That's what Minnesota Representative Melissa Hortman is being remembered for following her assassination on Saturday. A civic engagement group says she was a shining example of women in politics. Hortman's murder is seen by political observers as a stunning and tragic example of the increasingly violent tone surrounding public office in America. Hortman served as Minnesota House Speaker from 2019 until earlier this year, leading Democrats during power-sharing negotiations with Republicans in an evenly divided chamber. Michelle Whitty of the League of Women Voters says Hortman stayed true to the mission of an elected official.
Obviously, rise to power, but also just being in the community, working at all levels, at the local level, to engage people in issues that are of importance to them.
Whitty says Hortman's willingness to make tough decisions was on display this spring when finalizing a new budget, as she received pushback from her own party during the negotiations. Whitty says Minnesota still has gaps in electing women legislators, despite having more female politicians than half the other states in the U.S. She notes Hortman was among the most notable women in politics statewide, with others including U.S. Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith. In 2023, Hortman was credited for spearheading several major policies, including paid medical leave, abortion protections, and a universal school meal program. And while this year's power-sharing agreement with Republicans did have moments of friction, Whitty says Hortman's arrangement with GOP House Speaker Lisa Demuth was symbolic of women succeeding in the world of politics.
So League of Women Voters, we actually made a card out of the great handshake between Melissa Hortman and Lisa Demuth when they reached their power-sharing agreement. And I was so proud of that because that is what we really work for with the League, is seeing that working together.
Whitty hopes voters pay attention to those examples of bipartisanship and appreciate elected leaders who go above and beyond to serve the public. She acknowledges that the attacks on Minnesota lawmakers may make people feel anxious about taking part in democracy, adding the country needs to promote voter safety and prevent future candidates from being silenced. This is Mike Moen for Minnesota News Connection. Find our trust indicators at publicnewsservice.org.
We thank Mike for that at the Minnesota News Connection. We'll actually have some additional reporting of his later here in a few minutes. The children of Melissa and Mark Hortman released a statement yesterday, and I would like to read it in full because it's very poignant and heartbreaking. They write, "We are devastated and heartbroken at the loss of our parents, Melissa and Mark. They were the bright lights at the center of our lives, and we can't believe they are gone. Their love for us was boundless. We miss them so much. We want everyone to know that we are both safe and with loved ones. We are grateful for the outpouring of love and support we have received, and we appreciate your respect for our family's privacy as we grieve. Our family would like to thank law enforcement for their swift action that saved others and for the coordination across communities that led to the arrest of the man who murdered our parents. We especially would like to thank the officers who were first on the scene to our parents' home and their heroic attempts to rescue our mom and dad." I'm reading from the statement that the children of Melissa and Mark Hortman released yesterday. They continued, "Our parents touched so many lives, and they leave behind an incredible legacy of dedication to their community that will live on in us, their friends, their colleagues, and coworkers, and every single person who knew and loved them. If you would like to honor the memory of Mark and Melissa, please consider the following: plant a tree, visit a local park and make use of their amenities, especially a bike trail, pet a dog. A golden retriever is ideal, but any will do. Tell your loved ones a cheesy dad joke and laugh about it. Bake something, bread for Mark or a cake for Melissa, and share it with someone. Try a new hobby and enjoy learning something. Stand up for what you believe in, especially if that thing is justice and peace. Hope and resilience are the enemy of fear. Our parents lived their lives with immense dedication to their fellow humans. This tragedy must become a moment for us to come together, hold your loved ones a little closer, love your neighbors, treat each other with kindness and respect. The best way to honor our parents' memory is to do something, whether big or small, to make our community just a little better for someone else. Again, that was the statement that the children of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark released yesterday. When they say plant a tree, and we had just spoken with Representative Sandra Feist in the first half of the hour, and she was recounting a story of when she was outside the Capitol with Representative Hortman, and how Representative Hortman was saying, we need more trees here in the Capitol. And so I don't think that that's that's an important thing to say. And that's something that we could do here in Minnesota for folks who have the space to do that or want to come together with their community of planting a tree that honors Speaker Emerita Hortman. I think, something I also want to mention when they say pet a dog, a golden retriever is ideal. Representative Hortman had a golden retriever that she had rescued, and the suspect, who's now in custody, Vance Luther Belter, after he shot and killed them, also shot the dog on his way out as he was escaping out the back door. And to compound the tragedy, while they were waiting for the investigators and all of the SWAT teams and city polices and county to find him and arrest him, they had to put down the dog, which is just on top of all of it is so tragic. Not one thing more than the other, but it was a gut punch to read that that's something else they had to do on that absolutely horrific weekend.
It's always been a measure of a human being to me. If you can hurt an animal, you've got a screw loose at the very least. And so it's it's the simplest measure of a good versus a bad person.
Well, there is interesting research of tracking, when kids and adults are abusive to animals, that is considered a precursor to violence, conducting violence against humans. And so it is something that is, absolutely something that folks should be paying attention to. If there's cruelty, if a person is committing cruelty to animals, it's not that far of a walk to committing cruelty and violence against humans.
But I remember in the discussion with the one roommate, and he's like, he was a great guy. And I thought, okay, well, maybe from your perspective, maybe, but that seems like all I need to know that he wasn't a good guy.
It's something that is interesting. You can tell, I worked in higher education, and folks are trained, not extensively because we're not all, psychologists, but there are warning signs that with kids, students, whether they are, elementary, junior high, high school, and in college, university, up through grad programs, there are signs that people can be doing and engaging in that are red flags that you're like, I should probably talk to this person about, are they going to do something to themselves? If things that they're expressing seem outwardly violent. And it is, when we look at the facts of the case, as the federal investigators yesterday and the local officials have been laying out for us, that Belter had been stalking the people on his lists and making notes. And there are multiple notebooks, and had notes next to this list of targets that he had written down. And that had been going on for some time. We don't know yet how much time had passed, that a roommate or a spouse or someone didn't notice that. And maybe there's nothing to notice. Maybe that is the political psychology of all of it. Maybe, someone can do all of that and prepare to do all of that and just be showing a face that's like, hey, this is me on a daily basis. But it is hard to think that someone could do that and nobody would pick up on any signs that, hey, this person is either a danger to themselves or a danger to others.
I think 3 AK-47s and 3 handguns would be a warning to me, but everybody's got their their antenna tuned to different things. That would concern me.
In his vehicle. There were also, but I mean, it is part of that culture.
Absolutely.
I still remember when I came home to visit my dad one day, and he held out a gun to show me, and he said, this is the rifle that the DC sniper used. And I remember, I don't know what the look on my face was, but I remember the feeling inside, and I must have had a shocked look on my face because he suddenly just very quietly put it back.
Yeah.
And we changed the subject because I was so horrified.
But you're
like,
saying,
why do you need to have that? Why did you go out and get that? And why did you share it with me?
Why would you
in a way? So there is gun culture that used to be, I have a rifle or a shotgun and I go hunting with it. And this was back in the early aughts.
Right.
You know, the gun culture now has evolved in such a way where they're buying AK-47s, they're buying sniper rifles, and they're bragging about it, and it's a source of status. And so it's not anymore necessarily an indicator that you're about to go and, you know, murder somebody or commit a mass shooting.
Not today, but yeah.
I do want to give a brief update on the case. Yesterday, on Monday afternoon, Vance Luther Belter appeared in U.S. District Court in St. Paul. He had a federal public defender, so had not hired any firm or private attorney that was assigned to him. The U.S. Magistrate Judge John Doherty was presiding. The media were describing Belter in the courtroom as polite as the charges were read aloud. I thought that was a very interesting adjective to use, curious adjective. The charges were read aloud by Assistant U.S. Attorney Bradley M. Endicott. Belter afterwards said that he understood the charges and that he had read the criminal complaint. He also shared with the court that he only works part-time, owns his home, and maybe makes $540 per week, and claimed that he had no sources of income beyond that. His next hearing date is set for June 27th at 11 a.m. Obviously, we will be continuing to follow that story. Monday night, more than 100 people gathered at Grace Fellowship Church in Brooklyn Park for a community prayer service on Monday night. And there are also displays outside of the Minnesota Capitol. I know inside as well, in the House, the desk that Speaker Emerita Hortman used that was assigned to her. There was also a display there to honor her memory, and it's something that we've wanted to do here the past 2 days is to hold up her legacy, and you know, not just because she was, you know, a champion of progressive legislation and democratic legislation here in the state, and really had a significant impact on where we're headed as a state that we on this show are mostly aligned with. You know, these are policies and laws that, you know, we would, editorially speaking, support. But this is, you know, we wanted to take time away from our regular broadcast because this is such an attack on our democracy. And as queer people, you know, we have been experiencing attacks on the democracy and our ability to participate in the democratic process. So it just felt that we needed to take a step back. And I want to talk about, when we come back from the break, about how we can come back from, you know, what do we do next as Minnesotans and as Americans. So we're going to have some additional reporting from Mike Moen from the Minnesota News Connection. You are listening to a special broadcast of The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF and WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Your Twin Cities Metro Public Libraries are committed to providing quality services, resources, and programs to the LGBTQ+ community. Check out the Metro Pride book list, including ebooks and e-audio for kids, teens, and adults at melsa.org/pride-booklist. That's melsa.org/pride-booklist. You'll find titles specific to different identities, including aromantic, asexual, bi+, gay, genderqueer, intersex, lesbian, queer families, transgender, and two-spirit. Stop by Melsa's tent at Twin Cities Pride to share your own reading recommendations. Check out those contributed by other festival attendees. Pick up buttons and bookmarks and find out more about your Twin Cities Metro Public Libraries. Don't have a library card? Staff at the tent can help you with that. There will be librarians from the Metro Public Library systems who are happy to provide book recommendations and other info on how to get the most from your library card. This summer, the rainbow shines brightest in Loring Park. Join the celebration at Twin Cities Pride 2025, the nation's largest free pride festival and Minnesota's second largest festival after the state fair. It all kicks off Friday, June 27th with Youth Night from 4 to 8, and the full festival takes over Saturday, June 28th from 10 to 7 and June 29th from 10 to 6. With over 650 vendors, 3 entertainment stages, an expanded youth hideaway featuring the Rainbow Stage, and a brand new bull ride challenge, there's something for everyone at Twin Cities Pride. Explore 4 food courts with 46 vendors, 2 lively beer gardens, and the powerful history pavilion honoring Jean Nicholas Tretter's legacy. Plus, look for special stickers identifying BIPOC and queer-owned vendors, and don't miss the Rainbow Wardrobe, offering free gender-affirming clothing and resources. Getting to Pride is easy with free Metro Transit ride passes, and we'll be broadcasting live all weekend from the AM 950 tent. So let's celebrate, support, and show our pride together at Twin Cities Pride 2025.
Hi there, it's Jennifer again. I just have to tell you how Hypercharge Wellness has been life-changing for me. After my very first session, I felt a new sense of calm, started sleeping better, and my mind just felt clearer. I still can't fully explain all the science behind it, but I have heard that it's also great for people with chronic conditions, and I can totally see why. Every visit, my lower back pain eases, and I just feel so much better overall. I really noticed when I missed a few sessions recently due to a busy schedule. I could definitely feel the difference, and I knew I had to get back on track. If you're dealing with fatigue, pain, or even chronic issues, you owe it to yourself to give it a try. They even offer a $49.99 introductory session and consultation. Call and get started at any of their 3 Metro locations. Check out hyperchargeclinic.com and tell them Jennifer from AM 950 sent you. That's hyperchargeclinic.com.
Welcome back to a special broadcast of The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the top of the hour. Due to the violent events and attack on our democracy over the past weekend, we thought it was prudent and necessary to take a step back from our regular programming. We're going to turn to a big conversation now. Can humility, curiosity push aside political hate? And it's a big question here, particularly in Minnesota, as we've seen a U.S. senator and a U.S. representative whose district borders Minnesota, and I mean they're in Wisconsin, but they share a not unsubstantial border with Minnesota, being especially cruel on social media and making some truly hateful remarks. The president has also dogpiled on it, and the owner of a certain social media company has also done that. And there's just so much misinformation happening on the internet that it is a huge question. So we're going to turn again to Mike Moen from Minnesota News Connection, who put this question to Kevin Lindsay of the Minnesota Humanities Center.
As Minnesotans process this weekend shooting attacks on lawmakers, they're surrounded by talking points about turning down the political temperature. People well versed in humanities say it can't be half-hearted. Renewed calls for voters to listen to each other and pull back on hateful comments are often met with skepticism in today's politics. Kevin Lindsay of the Minnesota Humanities Center says in the course of American history, there are many instances when it has failed to govern with logic and reason, and now is one of those times. He says the role voters play should be grounded in healthy curiosity when debating the issues.
Really being curious, wanting to work in conversation and wanting to know more about the other person, not just responding with the idea of winning the argument.
He says people need to be humble in those situations and not think they have all the answers. Voters aligned with either major party might argue it isn't fair to take that road if they assume the other side won't. Lindsay agrees people can't compromise their principles with major policy decisions, and if the final outcome isn't what they hoped for, nonviolent dissent will always be an option, like peaceful protests. Minnesota is seeing more diversity with notable population gains from India, Mexico, and Somalia. Lindsay encourages residents to learn more about these new Americans and their backgrounds instead of making assumptions. He says not being genuinely curious about a new neighbor is a missed opportunity.
When we fail to see and value and appreciate our neighbors, then it doesn't really matter about a law. It doesn't really matter about the words within the Constitution. That's really the essence of our democracy.
As for hateful comments, Lindsay says all voters and leaders need to call out messages viewed as inciting violence. He says it can't just be politicians who need to police each other on this issue, urging leaders from all facets of society to speak up when they see rhetoric that clearly crosses the line. This is Mike Moen for Minnesota News Connection. Find our trust indicators at publicnewsservice.org.
And thank you to Mike and the Minnesota News Connection. They are an invaluable resource, and so we really appreciate the reporting that he is doing and has been doing since this weekend, but also just really excellent journalism that he's putting out there for folks. I think it is hard, when I hear things like the Civility Caucus that Representative Feist was talking about and how productive it can be to at least keeping debates to the floor of the Senate or the floor of the legislature and not letting it escalate to this violence. But when you start to look at, the denigration of humans, and I think as queer people and as queer people trying to participate in a democratic system in the United States, we do often find ourselves trying to just be seen as human, to be seen as, just, hey, we are here, we are citizens, we are trying to participate in this process. And it is, I don't want to say more so hard, but it is very difficult to live through a moment like this. And I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. This has been my thoughts over the past 4 days. It's been really hard to keep a train of thought going about how hard it is to find ways to be civil when you have so many people that are the leaders of MAGA and a party that are so quickly willing to denigrate you and not acknowledge your humanity and just be cruel for the sake of cruelty.
Yeah, I guess the thing that occurs to me when you see somebody like Senator Lee, and they're in a position of power. I mean, think about it in some other way. If the Democrats were in a position of power, if we had the legislature, the Supreme Court, all the media, the Russians helping us out, the presidency, had all the power, and then to punch down is a kind of cowardice that is beyond the pale. You have to be a real coward to say, we've got everything and we're going to spit down on you in the pit. That says something about him as a human being. It says something about Van Orden as a human being, and it is not good. And who I'm talking to is not those two bozos. Who I'm talking to are the people around them who go, ooh, that I didn't like that. That made me uncomfortable. You should be thinking about that because that's what you're associated with. If you voted for it, if your parents voted for it, if your Uncle John voted for it, you're associated with it, and you, I think, should disassociate yourself from somebody that would punch down from a position of strength. That is really gross to me. And think of the harm, the additional harm they're doing to people that are feeling terrible. It's like you get some pleasure out of making people feel terrible. What is the matter with you? You need to go lie down because that cruelty is inexcusable, I think.
Well, and it just shows why we need more leaders like Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman, and why I hope that more people will follow in her style and in her approach, and that there will be more people who are standing up and saying we need to run for office and we need to not be afraid of, and we need to push forward and course correct and get this country back on track. We are going to return to our regular programming tomorrow. Thank you everyone for listening and or watching today. Up next on WCPT 820 is Choose Views with Richard Chu on AM 950 Radio. It's the Matt McNeil Show, and stay tuned after that for Native Roots Radio. Thank you for joining us for this special broadcast. We will be back here tomorrow. Until then, be well.